The title of my talk today was about how corporations cannot afford not to be design-centric. And I tried to tell some stories about some of my past experiences professionally about how companies that invest in design can actually see a return to the bottom line. Over the last 10 years, these companies that significantly invested in design and made design important to their vision have outperformed the S&P 500 significantly over the last 10 years. The S&P 500 is an American stock indicator in the US. So probably some companies on there that you're not surprised, and maybe there's others that you are surprised. But don't fool yourself, there's a lot of investment in design happening, and some companies are being more humble about it than others. We consciously have very good global brand identity standards because we want you, if you buy a Coke here in Copenhagen or if you buy it in Atlanta, we want that experience to be really as similar as possible. We do a really good job making sure that we have the same great taste everywhere. But how that's executed in the marketplace, we spend a lot of time working on that. And so it is really important for, I think, a consistent consumer experience. But at the same time, whether certain cultures or whether certain shopping or buying habits don't permit, we do flex, and we do flex to local, cultures and buying patterns, and we shift the way we merchandise products in those markets differently. But to give them something that felt great every time that they used it and tell them it's all about you, this is your personal device. The luxury car companies, Mercedes, BMW, etc., they've been doing this for years. Car handles, steering wheels, gear shifts, they've always been very premium. But Apple's competitors at the same time, the likes of Lenovo and IBM, those were probably the cheapest elements on the product. They were far from jewels. That has since turned around. I think it's about creating the most holistic, optimized consumer experience in the voice of the brand that's right for the brand, but also right for the consumer. And I think having the ability to flex on how you design experiences in and around where your product's delivered and how it's used, once, twice, in a repetitive manner, and how you keep it new and fresh. And I think that holistic aspect, I talked a lot today about designing for every dimension and designing really well at every consumer touch point, and not just designing the two-dimensional aspects, but the three-dimensional and the four-dimensional. And it takes more time, and it takes more patience, and oftentimes it takes more money. But the holistic results are that you'll have a much more holistic consumer experience, they'll be more pleased, and hopefully they'll continue to be very loyal to your brand. It was the industrial designer partnering with the packaging engineer that helped elevate this experience. Still very functional, but now it was an emotional experience. And how much more powerful is that? It's really important to talk a lot about integration today. Apple's a great integrator, and one can argue probably a better integrator than a better innovator. However, I think those two are simultaneous and very important to never separate them, because you can't have great innovation without great integration. And I think it's critical that they leverage the designer and the creative individuals within their companies to help propel innovation and help propel the innovation agenda, and to leverage them to help your diverse cross-functional team members to not just visualize their ideas. Don't just leverage the designer to help sketch up what they might hear in a cross-functional brainstorming, but empower them to take the innovation, even if it's a small innovation from the cradle conception to commercialization, to take those risks and look at different individuals in your company that may not be what you currently perceive as the quintessential design innovator or integrator that's available right now. Coming into a big corporation, I never even knew how to do PowerPoint. We never did presentations at Apple. But I realized in order to build alliances, sell in my ideas, once this whole Apple novelty wore off, I had to behave like every other businessman in the company, where I had to sell in what we wanted, and we had to get funding, and we had to work just as hard to go through all those steps. So I realized that we had to create a model. Everybody has a model. Finance people like models. So we created a model to sort of explain our methodology. It's amazing how certain things can help make people feel more comfortable. And it's really about language. And the point I'm making here is that over time, I have learned, and I've helped build capabilities of my team members, that you have to learn to communicate in different ways depending on what audiences you're talking to. And I know that sounds very simple, but none of us would go to a foreign country and expect to live there without ever learning a second language. The same thing is in corporation. It's all different languages. When you get down to the roots, everybody is trained differently, and there's so much diversity, particularly from an academic background perspective. So it's about integrating people, assets, and partners. And I think that the three organizations within a company that are most important to focus on are finance, marketing, and manufacturing.